You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based grief and loss podcast for Black women, where you will hear stories of miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and infertility to learn there is a testimony in tragedy. You will learn how to heal, gain clarity, find hope and peace, and turn your pain into your purpose after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee. Welcome to episode 59 of the Sisters in Loss podcast. In today's episode, we have Lindsey Boxie, who shares her stillbirth journey with us. Lindsey was diagnosed with endometriosis in middle school and was told that because of the way her uterus was shaped, that she would have difficulty getting and staying pregnant. After college, she was able to conceive, and around 36 weeks, she went into labor, arrived at the hospital, and found out her baby had passed away. She then went on to have her rainbow baby afterwards, which led her to go back to school to help others through grief therapy. This episode is for you if you have been diagnosed with endometriosis and for those who have experienced a stillbirth. Here is Lindsey Boxie. Thank you, Lindsey, for being on the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, well, my name is Lindsey Boxie. I'm currently a student in a master's program of marriage and family therapy, and I am also a stay-at-home mom.
Awesome. So take us back on that journey to motherhood and tell us about your loss story.
Okay, well, it started for me. I was pregnant, that was 2015 with my daughter, Parker. And I was about 36 weeks pregnant, and I had a really sharp pain in my belly. And we weren't really sure, my ex-fiance and I, we weren't really sure what to do. A little scared about what was going on, so we went to the hospital for that pain. They admitted me in the hospital that night for an overnight stay to monitor her because they said that they had noticed a drop in her heart rate. Well, they discharged me the next morning and said to go home and stay on bed rest. And that was a Sunday morning they discharged me. I went to the doctor appointments on that Monday. I went to the doctor appointment that Wednesday and that Thursday morning. And on that Thursday night, I went into labor. And by the time I arrived at the hospital, they couldn't find her heartbeat.
Wow.
During my whole pregnancy, they predicted a low birth weight. So I was back and forth from my ObGyn to the maternal fetal medicine doctor. So I was receiving ultrasounds 2 to 3 times a month. And the closer it got to my due date, I was receiving an ultrasound probably twice a week just to check up on her and make sure everything was fine. And that Thursday morning before we lost her, I actually had an ultrasound that morning, and the amniotic fluid was perfect. She was moving around. She was practice breathing, and, everything seemed to be fine. And by the time I arrived to the hospital that night, they could not find the heartbeat.
Wow. So Tell us what happened after they couldn't find a heartbeat. What was the next steps in the process?
Well, that part was a little crazy for me because it was almost like an out-of-body experience. I was laying on the hospital bed, and they were trying to find the heartbeat. And the room was surrounded with nurses and doctors and ultrasound techs, and they were trying to stick an IV in my arm, and everything was moving really fast. And then all of a sudden, the room just got really quiet, and everyone just kind of walked out. And so I asked the doctor there if they had found the heartbeat, and he said, no, we haven't. And then he told me that they would move me into another room so that I could speak with my OB about delivery options. And I think at that point, my world just kind of shattered, but I went numb. I went completely numb. I didn't process it at all. And I didn't process it. I mean, we moved from that one room into another room where I actually delivered her. And there was a moment where I saw my belly and I panicked. And I think that was the first time after that had happened that I actually felt an emotion. And so I immediately just asked them to cover my belly because I couldn't see it. I couldn't, and I was contracting at the time. So my belly was still moving. And so in my mind, it's still moving. She's in there. She's moving. They're wrong. That's not true. And so my blood pressure, I had a placenta abruption is what they called it. So my blood pressure was extremely high and it kept elevating. So they gave me medicine to kind of put me to sleep because they figured if I could sleep, then maybe my blood pressure would kind of, decline a little, which it didn't. It just kept rising. So they were afraid that I was going to seize. But my OB came in and we decided instead of doing a C-section that we would do a vaginal delivery. So that's the route I chose. And it was something that I will never forget. It's something that it's a hard image to shake because I still had hope that she was still alive up until I held her in my arms.
Wow. So you went through labor and delivery to have your baby. So what happened after you pushed her out, after you were able to hold her? Were you all able to have a memorial service for her?
Right. Yes, she did. We did have a memorial service. I wasn't able to attend. It was really difficult to let her out of the room. And I had an amazing nurse. She was very warm, and she made sure that before I let Parker, which is my daughter, before I let her leave the room, that I was ready. And so letting them take her out of that actual delivery room was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. I couldn't pull it together to get to the actual memorial service. And I'm okay with that because I said my goodbyes then. And I almost feel like the memorial service was for the rest of my family to have that chance.
Right. So after the funeral is all and done, the memorial service is done, you're home. So now the real recovery begins. So how did your loss really impact your grief and your faith in God?
My story is a little different, and it's kind of hard to explain. I never felt like Parker was mine to keep. And I feel, and it's kind of crazy because I washed some of the clothes, but a lot of her clothing still had tags on it, and I prepared and I nested a little bit, but I didn't do it as much as, like, based upon how I am and how I know I am, I didn't do it to the full extent because something in me held me back. And now that I look back at it, I think that was God preparing me step by step, like, okay, you're gonna go through something, and I'm gonna have you. So and it was kind of strange because when they were looking for the heartbeat, when we were in the delivery room, I had my ex-fiance say the prayers. So as he was saying the prayers, she was passing away. And it's really difficult to explain, but I've always had a peace about it. From the moment I knew that I couldn't have her, I had a peace about it on me. Wow. I feel like he said, well, you're about to go through something, and you need to know that I'm still here. And I really, everyone around me was really sad, and I was sad as well, but I was more concerned with making them feel better. I was more concerned with helping the other people around me be okay about what had just happened.
Versus really focus on yourself. Right. And you say it hasn't stopped.
It has not.
Versus focusing in on yourself, which wow. That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. And I'm thankful you shared that, because a lot of people may have felt that as well, that, that their loss may be bigger than them in some way, or they kind of knew beforehand, like the Holy Spirit was preparing their heart that something was going to happen.
Exactly. And I think, I didn't really realize this gift in me until I had my loss, but God has blessed me with the gift to see the bigger picture about things. I can see, like, as soon as I had my loss, and I was searching, and that's what I'm glad that I found your group, because I was searching for something like that the entire time I was going through it in the beginning stages. I went to grief recovery groups, and all I could really find was people who had lost their spouse. And I'm like, we both lost someone, and I'm sympathetic to what you're going through, but it doesn't fit me. Mm-hmm. And our stories aren't exactly matching, and I'm not really finding relief in that. And actually, in the hospital, they sent a hospice person to speak with me about my loss. And I was like, well, I was grateful that they were thinking about me and trying to help, but that also didn't really fit what I needed either.
Right.
So with all those experiences, that's why I went into school for marriage and family therapy, because I'm like, I need to educate myself and get into the space where I can help those women who don't have the resources like I didn't, and I can be their resource.
Awesome. And we'll come back to that. Today's episode is brought to you by audible.com. Get a free audiobook and 30-day free download by visiting audibletrial.com/Erica. I have been loving Audible. Most recently, I listened to Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give and Darnell L. Moore's No Ashes in the Fire. If you love listening to audiobooks or are curious about what an audiobook can do to enhance your driving experience or your workout experience, visit audibletrial.com/Erica for more information. But let's talk about your trying again journey, getting pregnant with your rainbow baby, and how that pregnancy was. So take us back on that journey, your decision to try again, and then your pregnancy with your rainbow baby.
So Parker passed July 2015. By December 2015, I was pregnant again. So it happened really quick. I was ready. Mentally and physically, I was ready again. And so and one thing that stood out to me in that whole process was how quickly I became ready. And I feel like for me to jump right back in it, that had to be no one but God to say, okay, yeah, you couldn't have Parker, and Madison is my rainbow baby, but Madison is going to be yours to keep. And I was completely nervous the entire pregnancy. And I found myself praying harder and harder than I've ever prayed before in life, just pleading with God to just let me keep this one. And he did. He definitely did.
Awesome. So you didn't have any complications? You had a regular pregnancy with your rainbow baby? No issues?
No issues. The only thing different from my first pregnancy and this one was I had a thyroid issue, and I had an amazing doctor who took precautions every step of the way. My blood pressure was the issue in my first pregnancy, and so she had me on certain medications to make sure that we kept it regulated. And the second experience was I had a great team around me. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to, I think maybe out of all the many doctor appointments I went to, I may have gone to 2 by myself. I had support, and I think that's very important in trying again. Support is needed, because your emotions, 1 hour you might be one way, and the next hour it might be something completely different.
Yeah, awesome. And I definitely agree with that. Having that support system is key to getting through a subsequent pregnancy after loss. So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk back about your journey now to helping other grieving mothers. So what is your inspiration for going back to school and starting to actually study therapy? Let's talk about that.
So yeah, I'm in my master's program now. I actually just returned home from my residency program on Thursday. And I am committed to being a resource to women who share my experience. I want to be that person that if a mother is in the hospital and they are requesting someone to speak to, that they don't have to have a hospice person come in, that they can have someone who maybe looks like them and is knowledgeable about the grief process, so that I can not only just share an experience, but I can also have educated knowledge about it as well. As soon as I finish, I'm going to do a specialization in grief therapy to make sure that I'm equipped, because it's that important to me.
Awesome. So along the way through your journey, have you actually gone to therapy, and what are the benefits that you see from it?
I did attend grief therapy. I attended a couple of sessions, and it was nice to be able to have that open space and speak about it and not feel, because when you lose a child, you're always concerned that the other parent may not be ready to talk when you are. You don't want, if they're having a good day, you don't want to bring it up and then bring them down, well, for me, I always had that thought, like, I'm having a really hard time right now, and I don't want to bring it up to the dad because maybe he's having a good day, and I would hate to bring him down because who knows, he maybe couldn't sleep last night because he couldn't get it off his mind. So having that space of therapy where I can speak to someone that I'm not going to affect in that way and just be open about it is really refreshing. I recommend it.
Awesome. And I do too, especially as we're rounding out May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. I would like to talk about the resources and any tools that you use to help you through your grief journey. You can share some of those with our listeners.
I wrote a lot. I found that sometimes in my mind, my thoughts would get really jumbled up, and I wasn't able to really process it just thinking freely. And so when I would get a pen in my hand and start writing, I could focus it out. And I could write a little bit, and I could cry a little bit, and I could read over what I wrote and process my feelings. And it was a good relief for me. I also found it helpful to just talk about her and say her name was really big. It took me a while to actually say her name. And so I think that was a big coping thing for me. Music was very helpful for me. I would put my headphones in and listen to some really uplifting music. And I also read my Bible a lot, because I was one of those people that I'd start reading the Bible, then I'd put it down. I'd start reading it, then I'd put it down. And so when it came to losing my child, I really said, okay, God, it's time to dedicate myself 100%. And that was a completely new door that I couldn't even imagine.
Wow. So what encouraging words can you leave the mom who has experienced loss and is looking to try again?
One thing that I would have to say is to be true to your emotions, no matter who's around and what they may expect from you. And what I mean by that is, when I was pregnant with my second child, I found myself in positions where people would ask me, oh, is this your first child? And that's a question that stumped me every time. And I wouldn't know whether to say yes and ignore and feel like I was kind of not acknowledging Parker, or would it, if I say, no, this isn't my first child, well, now I have to sit here and explain my whole story to someone, and then they're going to look at me with that sad face again. And, it's a hard decision to make. And so I would say to be true to how you feel in those moments when you're pregnant with your rainbow baby, because neither one of them are right or wrong, and you have the right to change your mind in those moments. If on Monday you want to say that is your first child, do it. And on Tuesday, if someone asks again and you say something opposite, then that's fine too. No one can tell you how to answer those questions, and you shouldn't feel bad for how you respond either way, because it's your truth in that moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Where can we find you on social media, and what's your website? I'm on
Instagram as Miss Boxie, and that's MISS_B as in boy, OXIE. On Facebook, I'm just Lindsey Boxie, LIND as in dog, SEY. Boxie, BOXIE, and I am the only one on there, so it's very easy to find. And I encourage anyone who has any resources for me or any encouraging words or anything, I am very free and open to and accepting of all of those good things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lindsey, for being on the podcast and sharing your story and your light.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I pray that this show was inspirational and a blessing to you. For show notes, visit ericamcafee.com/podcast. Please join us in our offline discussions in our private Facebook group by going to sistersinloss.com. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, please rate and subscribe to us and leave us a 5-star review. I pray that you all have a blessed week. Keep the faith, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday.